let's talk about mealtimes. So significant change have come in terms of how mealtime monitoring goes. So how do you, within your settings, and obviously in terms of the wider group setting, do you embed those mealtime routines to ensure that everything is met within the changing safeguarding?
So at Happy Crew Childcare, we have always had social meal times. So children eat at the table together, and there's always at least a minimum of one member of staff sat at that table supporting the children with cutting up their food, serving themselves, rich, deep language. It's a really lovely social experiment and experience. But also, every single child, every single adult in my setting is paediatric 12-hour trained and qualified because, again, right from the admin to the cook, because it should be the person sat next to the child or nearest to the child that deals with an incident that's happening around meal times. And I think I see it all too often in nurseries when I go into support as a consultant. Children sitting down to eat and staff milling around, pouring water, putting food away, washing up, and there's children sat down. Now, that's okay if you're at home, maybe for you, but we're dealing with multiple children at a time, and sometimes in larger nurseries, large groups of children. So it's about preparation and getting everything to the table before you need to sit down with those children so you're not moving around while they're eating. And just also being really aware of the fact that we want to give children consent. If a child, verbal or non-verbal, indicates they're done with their food, that's it. That becomes safeguarding to me. We're not saying one more or trying to force a spoon into a baby's mouth. It's about respecting that child and making sure that we're understanding what their consent is. But I think, again, best practice. For the cost, as an owner, to have everybody first aid trained, everybody should be first aid trained.
We've done a lot of work about positive timed interactions. We obviously know previously Ofsted would focus quite heavily on what that interaction looked like at meal times. But when you go out for dinner with your friends, you've just taken a mouthful of your food and the waiter comes over and says, "Is everything okay with your food?" And everyone's panicking, looking at each other. We don't want children to feel that, so it's about how we time those questions. We're not going to start asking children to talk to us about what they want to do this afternoon when they've got a mouthful of food.
I think quite often we look at protecting our teams from documents like the reforms, from documents like the toolkit. But actually it's about, do the team know about paediatric first aiders being present at meal times? Because in that moment of deciding who's on the early shift, who's going to their lunch first, who's going next, do they know who is, if we don't have the liberty of having everybody paediatric first aid, do your teams know that that's an expectation of them, so that when they are planning their lunch breaks that they've taken that into consideration? Because I do think we protect them sometimes, but actually how have we broken down this document and how have we shared it with your teams so that they do know that that is now a requirement?
When cover is tight, I mean, obviously we're going to get to staffing on this. What are there any things that you have in place in terms of ensuring that the right people do stay in the rooms at the right times? Anything particularly you've seen, either through lived experience in your settings or things that you've seen perhaps other operators do that work really well in terms of simple points of action to make sure that the right people with the right qualifications are in the right room, regardless of what's going on elsewhere, and whether there's no staff that day. It'd be really good to hear anything about that.
So as a single setting, in terms of kind of lunch cover, because it's really difficult, it's quite hard to juggle. You guys have probably got it down to a fine art. The management come out from whatever it is they're doing at lunch. So I'm level 3 qualified. I've got my 2 deputies are level 5 qualified. We will stop doing whatever we're doing, whether it be compliance, admin, whatever, and we will come onto the floor to support meal times so that those staff can go off and have that vital break that they need, but also ensuring we're still in ratio, because a lot of people misunderstand that when children are sleeping, they still need to be in ratio. That's a legal requirement. So we will stop what we're doing in the middle of the day, come out into the nursery floor and make sure that we deploy people, and we never send all the level 3s off for lunch on the early lunch shift. So then we're leaving unqualified or level 2s with the senior management. We would make sure that each room kind of, it's a fine art, but just to make sure that you're mindful of, oh, I'm sending a level 3 off in that room, so I've still got 2 level 3s, room leaders, etc., etc. So it's just about spending time looking at your team, figuring out who's got what qualification in what room. This should all be something that we all know or have written down. And then I think it's just really about kind of either having a rota system, which you guys maybe do, or being able to manage that on a daily basis with the team that you have, because it chops and changes.
Yeah, similar for us. We have relief staff that we, have as always staff. Where possible, we try not to interfere with the under 2s meal times, because we know that key person approach and babies and young children having a familiar face will only increase that positive interaction. So we always prioritise the children's lunches and meal times over staff. So we make sure that children have had their meal times where possible in the younger ages, and then we will start to with the staff. But we are fortunate that we've obviously got a larger bank of staff, so we're able to bring in those relief staff. Some centres do still have lunch cover, so we make sure that those staff are coming in and it's consistent. We always keep, obviously, up at paediatric, we make sure we've got our levels in there that we need, and we just focus on that mealtime being the priority.
What have you seen that's been successful in terms of, let's talk about like plate checking and allergy checking, because that's obviously a hot topic at the moment, particularly with allergy breaches, and how we make sure that continuity of understanding the right plate with the right child. What have you seen within your settings, and how do you impact that within your groups?
So again, I think it comes down to the key person, having a really robust key person system. So, you should be making sure that you're dealing with food for your key children and making sure that they have everything they need. Their allergens are checked. If you've got any children with allergies, there should be a really robust, how are you doing that in your nursery? Do you have a photo? Do you have a different coloured plate? Do you have a list on the kitchen wall? Do you have all of the above? Do all of your team know as well which children are allowed to eat X, Y, Z? It's becoming ever more common that children have allergies or intolerances, and that becomes then a safeguarding concern. And sometimes you hear, oh, I had an apprentice that day and they gave, well, actually the apprentice should not be responsible for feeding those children. That should be the key person's responsibility. So again, it is just about making sure that your team culture is right, your chain of command is right, and everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And like Carly said, certainly the way we do it, the same as Busy Bees, no staff goes on their lunch before the children have finished eating. We feed them at 11:30. Most of the children are finished eating at 12, so then we would start staff lunches.
So we've got 2 sets of eyes check-in. That member of staff that's signed for that red plate will sit with the child and be responsible for that meal time. There's no getting up to help or water for another child. Even if sometimes meal times are a bit stressful, their focus is to protect that child and make sure that they're not consuming any of the allergen that they're not allowed to.